Hi, everyone. This is Jose Velasquez from HireMilitary, and I'm really excited today to introduce a good friend of mine, Jason Brown, who's the Vice President for Media Relations for Golden Media Incorporated. And Jason and I were colleagues together, worked in the military together, and now he's off doing incredible things. And we're really excited to have him on so that we can talk to him, gain some insights from him, learn from him, and hopefully grow from him as well. So, Jason, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Jose. I'm excited to be here.
Oh man, so talk to us. VP of Media Relations, right out of the military. What? Talk to me.
Yeah, it's it. I'd like to say I had this lined up from the get-go, but I was one of those the ones that you laugh about. I retired right in the middle of when COVID-19 was fired on all cylinders, and all the best laid plans went right out the window, and I ended up doing something that I had no idea. It didn't go the way I thought it would go at all.
Well, obviously you retired in this COVID environment. It was probably very strange. It surely was for me as I was going through it. But did you hit any hiccups? Any areas that were pretty tough for you?
Well, first of all, I mean, in the transition itself, you want to talk about just the retirement, itself. Trying to clear when you're PCSing is tough. Trying to clear when you're retiring, when nobody is working from their offices, is something entirely different. And going through the retirement process, there was no VA rep. They had their offices closed up. I ended up calling and working with a random one back in my hometown. Ended up making a lot of phone calls, and it got through it, and it went through the typical. The paperwork didn't get submitted, so my retirement pay started about a month and a half late.
Oh my God.
But I got the back pay, and everything eventually worked out. But yeah, it was an interesting time to retire, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I know. I feel the same way, man. It was, I retired late October, and it was just so confusing. There was so much going on, and so it is what it is. I mean, there's nothing we could have done about it, but I know other people are still experiencing that and going through it. And I really wanted to bring Jason on more than anything because he did it. He went where many of us want to go, and he had a successful transition. And so, Jason, what part did that networking have to do in your discussions with not just your current employer, but as you grew your network?
So I'll tell you, very early on in the process, probably not very early, when everybody says there's no such thing as you can't start too early, that is absolutely true. I really started in earnest. I went through CIFL-TAP, I think in December. My retirement ceremony was supposed to be in June. And I really started my networking in January in earnest when I had a LinkedIn seminar, and I can't remember who it was, recommended that I read the book, the 20-minute networking meeting. And anybody on this call, if you've never read this book, I really recommend you go get it. It's called the 20-minute networking meeting, and they have an edition on there for military veterans. So they have a special edition on for military veterans, and it really floored me. And I'd had a LinkedIn account for many, many years as a PAO, and the only thing I really used it for was to find reporters in different areas. And it really opened my eyes as to what networking could be. And I started making phone calls about April or May, and by the time I retired in June, I was on the phone anywhere from 3 to 6, 7, 8 times a week. Just making not random anything but random, making calls to different people, just to expand my network.
Yeah.
And at the very first few I did, that book gives you like a blow by blow, play by play of how to do it. And I scheduled those things, and I did them exactly the way. And it works.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does. It's amazing. And I started keeping track, and I really wish from the beginning, I started keeping track of everyone I had spoken to and who they introduced me to and who they introduced me to. And by the time I was still talking to people, and I still do. I still made a networking call last week, and I started looking at them, and some of these people I'm talking to now are fourth and fifth levels down from the initial people that I spoke to. So it was, one person introduced me this to this to this to this, and then I'm talking to this person down here. And so, and now that I'm working, and now that I'm in the industry, having that network it's very valuable. I've used it several times to good effect, even since I've been hired.
Yeah, no, that's really good information. And I think anyone who's serious about, moving into the civilian sector and coming out of the military, I think people focus a lot on resumes. And of course, a resume is important. It's your calling card. It's a place that really expresses your experience in a succinct way. But without a network, without knowing people and interacting with them, and without those second and third order effect connections and support from people, it can be very, very difficult. The HireMilitary team talks about 94% of all resumes that ever go into the system, the Rolodex that disappears and on somebody's desk and never to be seen again. 94% of those are never responded to, or if they are, you get the, hey, thanks for applying, but we picked somebody else. And so very few of these, go, get a job, but a significant amount of people who are recommended or referred do get the job. And you had a similar experience with yourself, right?
I did. So I'll talk about, so the job that I was referred to, I was actually offered it to. I was offered the job and I turned it down. So I was referred to a job with Amazon. They were looking for military leaders, and they still are. Amazon is they're really they have a great program. It's really easy to find on LinkedIn. Just look up the Amazon hiring, the military hiring efforts, and they do weekly video casts. So I was referred to there, and they looked, and I went into the interview process. It takes a couple of weeks. You do an initial interview, a follow-on interview, and then there's a 5-step interview with different people that ask you different questions. There's a written exam as part of it. But anyway, to get down to it, I was offered a job as a operations manager for a distribution warehouse with Amazon. And I was laughing. I was telling Jose before, I was telling you, I can't even spell logistics. And Amazon didn't care. They kind of figured that we will teach you the logistics. What we're looking for is a proven leader who's got a good head on your shoulders, and you make solid decisions. And you can, you walk the walk, you walk the talk, and they offered me the job, and alas, I didn't take it. I turned it down because it was. I admit, kind of going after that job, I was getting a little bit desperate because the job search wasn't going nearly as well as I thought it was going to go. Yeah. And then I looked at it and I thought, is this really what I want to be doing?
Right.
And much like Jose, I was a public affairs officer. And I really liked it. I didn't do it because I had to. I went into public affairs because I really enjoy it. Yeah. And it's something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so I said, thank you for the offer. But I'm going to stick to what I really want to do. And, it wasn't right away. It took, it was over a month after that, that I did that until I landed.
Yeah. Well, it's terrific. And you know what? You were focused, you knew what you wanted to do, and you didn't settle. And so I think a lot of people need to hear that you don't have to settle, that other opportunities are going to come your way. But a lot of it is based off that networking. So Stacy asks, how did your military work experience contribute to your current job? I assume that there is a lot of equations there.
Yeah, there is. And first of all, just going back to that Amazon example, they asked me a lot of questions about the jobs I'd held as a long time ago as a company commander. They were asking me things I did as a recruiting company commander. God, that was 2002 to 2005. Asking me questions about how I handled certain situations, about projects I'd worked on, teamwork, things like that. Those all went into it, and those all they are important to people looking for new hires. And more specifically, my niche, public affairs, I decided when I went into it, this is what I want to do when I grow up. And I got my master's. I went and got my master's in public affairs, public relations. Did the whole thing online, University of Maryland, all the way, just like everybody did it. And it paid dividends. It very much affected the job I got right now. And the job I got right now, which is really funny because you bring up my military experience and my background. This isn't even the job that I applied for. So I applied for a job just because, again, I was feeling a little froggy after having been in this job search thing from June, and it was now October.
Oh my God.
And the only thing I'd gotten was from a company I didn't want to work for. It was for Amazon. That came out wrong. Doing a job I didn't want to do at Amazon. I would have loved to work. I actually applied for a job as a regional public affairs, a public relations manager for Amazon. And once again, that's one of those I blindly sent in, never heard back. Yeah. Never heard anything back from that. But when I interviewed for this job, it was for a social media manager. Well, the more they talked to me and they learned about my experience, they learned about my qualifications, they went back and rejiggered the job and called me back and offered me the job that I have now, which is the vice president of media relations.
Man, tough time. You you came in looking for one job and, they were like, no, yeah. I don't know. That was reverse haggling. They
upsold me. Yeah.
No, that's amazing, man. But I mean, that speaks volumes about you and the experience that you brought in the door, and likely, your connection with both the hiring managers and the people that you interacted with prior to them making that decision. So that's a real positive. So I'm bringing Stacy back up.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a lot of great questions. He asked, has LinkedIn contributed to your current job? And then which sites did you receive the most feedback from? Indeed, LinkedIn, USA Jobs, Glassdoor.
Yeah. So the easiest answer to your first one, yes, absolutely. I found this job application online in LinkedIn. I had set up job alerts based off a few keywords, and I got them. When I first started, I signed up for all those websites, Indeed, Glassdoor, you name it. I had them all. I had about 5 or 6 of them going, and I was getting blasted with so many emails every single day that I narrowed it down. And really, the 2 that I ended up using was Glassdoor and LinkedIn. And what I liked about LinkedIn is it had the networking features in addition to the job search. Glassdoor was
answers, but
mm-hmm.
So Ted asked this great question. He's retiring in 2023. He's a first sergeant, and obviously that's stressful for anybody. Company commander, first sergeant is those are the 2 of the hardest jobs in the military. And he says, whatever he ends up doing, he never wants to feel so stressed out. I understand, and one of the things I think people should consider as they begin the transition is whether they want a career after the military or whether they want a job. And there's nothing wrong with each one. It's really based off of your circumstances and what you want to do. Mm-hmm. So, in your case, I assume that, for the time being, this is, career material for you.
It absolutely is. And what was it? Ted, I think, was that his name? It said, yeah. Hey, I feel you. Jose will tell you, the last job I had in the Pentagon, I was Mark Esper, who was the Secretary of the Army, and now I guess he's the former Secretary of Defense now. I was his public affairs officer for the last year that I was in the Army. You want to talk about stress. You remember Jose will tell you, remember what my hair looked like when you first met me? I was completely bald. I had a shaved head because before this, I was a division public affairs officer for the 4th Infantry Division. Before that, I was in AFRICOM going to the continent several times a year. I had a shaved head. I was hua all the way. And I looked up at this, and when I knew it was time to retire, I said, I'm not going to chase the money.
Yeah.
Quality of life is what's most important to me right now. And that's honestly why one of my biggest decisions I made was at the very beginning. I said, I don't want to work in DC. I don't want to stay in DC, and I don't want to work for the government.
Right.
That's not to say that the government, getting a GS job isn't a great deal, because it could be.
Yeah.
And it's the right pick for a lot of people. But for me, I decided when I retired, I'm going to get a new career.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get a job, and I'm going to get something I enjoy doing, which kind of goes back to that job with Amazon. Now, can you imagine? So when I was applying for this job in September, can you imagine coming on to a job at a worse time, like Amazon distribution network in the middle of the pandemic with Christmas coming around the corner? It was a salaried, exempt job, so I wouldn't have been paid for overtime. And it's 12-hour shifts, 4 days a week.
Oh,
And when you first start with the company, you don't get to pick what shift you get, and you either go Thursday through Saturday or Sunday through Wednesday. So either way, one of your weekend days is gone. And I said to myself, and that was the biggest thing, that it wasn't the work, it was that was the schedule. And I said, I'm retired. Quality of life, family is what's important to me now, and I'm going to hold out for the job for the right job. And the job I have now, I work from home 3 days a week. I come into the office 2 days a week. And it's very, on days that I can't be here, there's no problem at all. Well, like I said, it was just a great fit when I found it.
And I'll tell you, you got that whiteboard behind you, and people may not have a whiteboard at home, but I absolutely encourage people to sit with their families. And a lot of times, service members, we are not very good at communicating with our families. And we're all transitioning together. So don't forget about your spouse and your children if you have children, because it's incredibly important that they are in on the decisions that we're making.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, for some people, salary is the most important thing. For some people, location. For some people, quality of life. Similar values of an organization, whatever that case is. And chances are it's a combination of a little bit of all those things. But inevitably, you have to know yourself. You have to know what you want to do. As Michael Quinn used to ask me all the time, he'd say, Jose, what do you want to do? And I'd be like, I don't know. Don't ask me that question. I don't know. I'm not really sure. But you know what? Somebody has to ask you that question, and you really have to figure it out. And if you can't figure that one out, at least remind yourself of what you don't want to do. Absolutely will not do. And in your case, it sounds like, if nothing else, you not only had an idea as to what you wanted to do, but also you weren't willing to make that additional sacrifice on the Amazon side for what might have been a financial benefit.
Yeah.
Not necessarily something that you wanted to come to work every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I was told that I think the first time I heard it was Siffle Tap, but I mean, it really was true. They said, there's 3 decisions you got to make. Where you want to work, what you want to do, and what industry you want to be in. And the more flexible you're on, and the more of those, the easier it is to find work. And one I was not willing to compromise on. I said I was coming home to Michigan. You can see I'm sporting my, wrong color. I'm sporting my, I was born and raised in Michigan. Detroit area, not known for its big economic, making a lot of money or booming economy. It hasn't been known for that for a very long time. But I made the decision that I'm coming back here. And so I decided to be a little more flexible on the other things, but and that's probably that is why I went on and interviewed for the Amazon job in the first place. But in the end, it came down to deciding what was important for me and what I wanted to do with my life.
Yeah. So question for you, mentorship is something that I think a lot of people gain great value from, and not just military mentors, but both military and industry mentors, maybe even personal, on a personal level. And so for you, in your case, what did you have mentors going into this, people that were at least beginning to guide you, and what benefit did you get from that?
I did, and you're going to know one of them. You remember Rob Manning?
Of course.
Yeah. So Rob Manning was very influential with me when we very first started out. He retired right ahead of me, and I was right ahead of you. And he retired out of DOD. I still stay in touch with Rob, and we still talk. And he helped guide me through the process. He gave me a lot of advice, a lot of good advice right up front. I received some helpful advice from up in the secretary's office, our chief of staff in particular. was very blunt, very honest with me about the pros and cons of staying in and leaving. And this is from a guy who had already been selected for a 1-star list. And he was very honest with me about some things. But I'll tell you, through networking, I found a couple of mentors, people I'd never met in my entire life. And when I talked to them, they couldn't believe it. Like, wow, you're just calling me just to say hi, and because you want to work in our industry and you're not asking me for a job, you're just wanting to know advice. And I have 3 or 4 people who are, they own a PR group, or they were another PR pro in transition that I met. Actually, 2 of them own PR groups, and we're real interested. We pick each other's brain, and we still talk.
Yeah.
And they made so many connections, so many. And matter of fact, one of them, the initial one that gave me a lot of advice, I just called him for a recommendation on another. Our company is hiring a part-time gig just for the next few months, and I called him up. I called up 2 of them actually, and they both gave me recommendations for new hires.
Yeah.
So that mentor, taking that advice, it's something that those of us have been in for a long time. We kind of think we know what we're doing, and we're used to actually being the mentors.
Right.
I was a senior lieutenant colonel. I was the secretary's, the secretary of the Army's public affairs officer. And, I was looked up to, and it's a whole different ball game when you step out of that comfort zone.
Yeah.
And you're a rookie.
Yeah.
And you got to find people to look up to and to talk to. And one of the things I did do, and I wish I'd done it earlier, is I signed up for the American Corporate Partnership Program.
ACP. Yeah.
ACP. ACP. Now it was really funny. I heard about them at SIFLTAP, and I really wish I would have taken up on it at SIFLTAP, but I didn't get into it until real late in the game. And by the time I contacted them, they linked me up with somebody. Actually, it was a great match. He wasn't exactly in my area. He's in Chicago, and he works for Fox Television in Chicago. But between the time they assigned him to me and we had our first conversation just to be introduced in our first session, that's when I got my job.
Right.
Which was really funny. But we've stayed in touch, and we still do our monthly calls.
Yeah.
Even after I got my job, we still do our monthly calls, and we still talk about things.
Yeah.
And we still share ideas. I'm older than him too, which is kind of funny. He's my mentor with the ACP.
Well, I think that's one of the funny things is, my experience as well. I also went with ACP. I actually went with them twice. So I joke that I'm a really slow learner. So it took me 2 mentors. But the reality is, there's so much that we don't know about industry. A lot of times we don't know how to really express our experience and express it in a way that makes sense in the civilian industry world. And so having those mentors, having people that are out there, and I'll tell you, one of the things that you can do, and I know we're here to talk to Jason, but one of the things that you can do when you're searching on LinkedIn is go into the search function, go to all filters, and then add second connections, and then go down to military, whatever service you're in, since that'll give you a direct connection to somebody, a shared connection, and then go down a little further and go to industries. Find the industry that you are interested in going into and begin to look through those people that come up on your search. And I'll tell you, it's amazing, especially those who are veterans. That's why you throw the U.S. Army in our case. Those people are so willing to help you.
Oh, man.
And some of them are really senior people.
Yeah, it was amazing. I found so many people who I'd never met in my entire life willing to bend over backwards. I did get several referrals, and I didn't land with those jobs. Just from people that I cold called in the company that were Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard, anybody. It does not matter. It absolutely does not matter. When you say, "Hey, I'm a vet. I just moved into the area, and I'm hoping you could help me."
Yeah.
Almost to a person, they responded immediately and said, "Call me right now."
Yeah.
And they talked about it, and some of them said, "Hey, this company isn't the right fit for you, but I think I might know somebody who is." Or it was amazing. People I'd never met, and still to this day I've never met in person. Yeah. Thanks, COVID. Did a lot of video calls, a lot of phone calls.
Yeah. And you're right. And I think a lot of people, when you're concerned about, oh my God, this person's a CEO, they're not going to want to talk to me. You know, there's somebody's, you know, muckety muck important person in the company. But when you have the shared connection of maybe it's military service, it doesn't have to be. Maybe it's a shared connection of a university.
Alma mater is very big. It's a big one.
Those are great starting points. And so one of the things that, and I want to say it was Mike Quinn that shared this with me. You know, he said, think of yourself 5 years from now, and you're this successful professional out there. Maybe you're the COO of a company. Maybe you're some executive of a company, and someone called you and said, "Hey, I'm so and so. I'm getting ready to leave the service, and you know, really interested in following in your footsteps. Would you have 10 minutes to talk to me?" I would do it. Of course.
Absolutely.
And it makes total sense. But too many times we think, oh no, this person's not going to want to talk to me. You got to take a chance. You got to take a chance. The least
worst thing can happen is they say no, right?
Worst thing that can happen is
they said no to me. I had retired generals that were in upper echelons of government calling me back just to say hi and welcome back to Michigan, or help with this, and we'd spend the first 10 minutes complaining about the Lions. There's a lot to complain about the Lions.
Hey, I'm with you, man. Yeah. Hey, Roger Ross has a great question. Just your personal experience. Do you recommend using a service to write your resume to translate your job experience to your career?
So I'll tell you, Roger. I don't. So the resume that I got hired on, to tell you the truth, is the resume that I wrote at Civil Tap. Honestly, it is. 10 months before I got hired, I wrote it at Civil Tap. And it's not the exact same one, but that's the format. I never changed the format. I evolved it lots of times. Michael Quinn sniped at me once or twice about some of the things I had on there. And I had a lot of people, it goes back to networking. A lot of people will offer to look at your resume, especially if you get somebody on the phone that's an HR rep. I met a couple people that are HR folks. They went over my resume and gave me pointers and gave me bits of advice. And I took all of it. I thought about it. I thought about that's a lot of money. I mean, some of these services want $1,000, $1,500 to write your resume for you. And I even had one that's going to offer to redo my whole LinkedIn profile for me. And I said, you know what? I'm good. I'm confident that my skills and my experience, that there's somebody out there that wants me that wants me to work for them. Absolutely. And so I stayed on it. I bet I updated my resume every week, every other week.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I did apply. Remember I told you got to apply for those jobs? I never once sent in a resume that wasn't tailored to the position and the company.
That's right.
Every single one of them. I rewrote, I reordered things. I added or deleted blocks. I definitely rewrote that top paragraph for every single one of them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that's so incredibly important. Is you really have to focus on the particular job you're applying for. And something that I'll share with people that I don't think we always consider, our profile is also a living document, our profile on LinkedIn. And so as you're creating that, you really want to focus your energies on what industry you're interested in, the jobs that you're interested in doing, and apply those skills and that experience that really speak to that. I see, especially with senior leaders, you'll have this humongous summary section that expresses every single thing you know how to do. And it's like, okay, I don't know, leader, advisor, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And you don't have any idea as to how any of that translates to being an HR person or an operations person. And so I always recommend to people, hey, look, grab that about section, the summary section, put it on a Word document. It's awesome that you've got all those skills, but focus those skills on the job you want to do. Because ultimately, that's what matters to an employer that goes to your profile. And as you know, so many times employers will go to your profile, if nothing else, to check and make sure that what's on your resume is also on your profile. So, I really like that. So I definitely encourage people to do that. And again, it's a living document. You can always change it as your career progresses. If you want to change industries, don't be afraid to do that. I think that's incredibly important.
Exactly.
Yeah. And listen, for those of you who are coming in, late, and I recognize we're getting ready to go off the air here in just a little bit. But, we always keep our live streams on our LinkedIn page. You can always go to the HireMilitary LinkedIn page. But in addition, you can go to YouTube if you're on YouTube and search for HireMilitary, all one word. And then same with Facebook. If you're on Facebook, you want to check us out there, HireMilitary there as well. But, I think it's incredibly important that we hear from people like you who have been successful in their transition, because, it's important for people to hear and to know that, that you can do it and that you can achieve these great heights that you have.
Yep, you can. And I know we're about to sign off, but if I can, I wrote a couple of things down. If you ever asked me for a couple, words of advice.
Of course.
And so, I actually wrote them down. I prepared for this meeting. And one of the things, the very first thing I think I would say to somebody in transition when you're retiring, is you've got to get a schedule. Go ahead, grow the beard. I saw Jose. It's one of the first things I mentioned to him. He grew the beard. I grew a beard. It's great. Everybody grows a beard. Have fun. Grow a beard. Sleep in. Have fun. But you've got to get a schedule. And as if you don't, you start getting lazy and you get down on yourself. And it's all about staying positive. I made sure that every morning at 9 a.m. I logged into LinkedIn to check my messages. I logged into Glassdoor to check my messages, check things out. I took a shower. I got dressed. I didn't get a haircut. It was COVID, but it gets you in the mindset and it keeps you going. And the next thing I did is I started using a calendar religiously. I used that calendar every time I made a phone call with somebody. I put it on the calendar and I sent them a link to the invite with it, so it was scheduled and it was on there. And that way I could go back and reference that calendar and figure out when exactly I spoke to that person, and when it was going forward. And you can. It's so easy when you're not writing things down to double book people, and you look disorganized and unprofessional. And it's, and that doesn't reflect highly on somebody that they want to hire. And the last bit is one I already talked to. Know what you want out of this search, and don't compromise. If you're retiring, look, you've got your pension. You're not going to starve. If you're retiring, you ain't starving. And and a lot of the audience is going to be in my boat. I'm divorced, so I have half my pension. Okay. I'm getting half my pension, and I knew I wasn't starving. I was okay. And so that was one of the reasons I was able to turn down jobs, and I was able to stay sane. I got up every morning, I went through the motions, I did it. And I just knew I tried to stay positive, and I knew, and I had my wife, God bless her soul, stayed with me the whole time, and she was my champion. She was my cheerleader. She said, yes, it's kind of that Stuart Smalley, you're good enough, you're smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like you, you're going to have to do that sometime. And, stick to your guns, but yeah, just stick to it, and you'll get through it. You'll land.
Yeah, no. And I love that. And I love the fact that, you focus on the fact that you interacted and really spent some time making some of these decisions with your spouse, because ultimately, again, too many times I'll hear of service members who are transitioning. And I actually just had a conversation with some military spouses who, rightly were complaining that a lot of times through the transition process, the service member doesn't bring the spouse with them to some of this training. And, sometimes the questions that we forget to ask are the most important. We're so focused on the job. We're not thinking about benefits. We're not thinking about where we're going to live. We're not thinking about quality of life issues. We're just thinking, I got to find a job somewhere.
Yeah. There were a lot of questions my wife asked me that I was frankly embarrassed I didn't know the answers to, because I never thought to ask.
Yeah.
She said, well, you used to get an LES. Says, what do you get after you're retired? I said, I think. She's like, who do you call? I was like, it still comes from DFAS, I think.
Yeah.
I didn't write it down. He said, am I going to get an LES? I have no idea. So who do you call if you don't get paid? And the same thing with my TRICARE too. There was no TRICARE rep when I cleared. They were gone.
Yeah.
There's no TRICARE rep to explain to me what, the TRICARE and life insurance too.
Yeah.
There was nobody there to talk to me about life insurance, and I never thought to ask, because it's something I've taken for granted for 23 years.
Yeah.
That's always just been there. It is funny. Include your spouse.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, listen, Jason, you've given us some terrific advice, and we're so appreciative that you gave us some time and really the opportunity to pick your brain as the comments came in, people asking questions, and ultimately, I want to thank the people that were commenting as well, because many of them were answering each other's questions and showing support for each other, which is incredibly important again, because these live streams really help us, to connect people, and sometimes the side conversation over there actually is the most beneficial thing of all. They'll remember Jose and Jason, but they'll be like, yeah, Jose and Jason, but I learned something over here on the side. So all of this is incredibly important. And again, I really appreciate your time, because it really matters, and giving back to those who are right behind us matters so much. So thanks, man.
All right. Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Jose.
Oh, no problem. So we've been talking to Jason Brown, who's the Vice President of Media Relations for Golden Media Incorporated. He is a soldier for life, and he recently retired from the military and walked right into this incredible opportunity. And I'm, again, appreciative for you sharing your thoughts and sharing your advice with the rest of us. So remember, HireMilitary.us is our website, and you can absolutely find us on LinkedIn at HireMilitary, on YouTube at HireMilitary, and also on Facebook at HireMilitary. We invite you to check us out. We've got these live streams almost every single day. So thanks again, and we will talk to you soon.